Waking up to find myself made of porcelain completely broke me mentally. Everything that I had tried to prevent had happened to me. I had lost my mom and my brother, and now it looked like I was going to lose my very life. While I was forced to sit at the counter of this empty shop, the office door flung open, and a cabal of creatures poured out of it. I wondered how they could have all fit in there, but that thought was thrown away when Creel approached me and slammed Travis's decapitated head onto the counter. "You broke my shop, clerk," he said angrily, looking at me with nothing but rage and anger behind those button eyes. I tried to avoid his gaze, but he grabbed my face and forced me to look back at him. His anger was soon replaced by a crooked smile and a simple shrug. Shame, he lasted longer than the others. He was certainly my favorite. Creel chuckled, letting go of me, and picking the head up, and tossing it to the floor with a loud thud. "Why, you hunted him over and over. How are you possibly over him so quickly?" I asked, dumbfounded as I noticed the ringleader sneaking behind Creel and picking Travis's head up. Creel looked over at me and offered a snicker as he again grabbed my face roughly. "'Cause he ruined everything I built. So I made sure to ruin him till the point where he belonged solely to me. And you went and broke my property. Can't even fix him since you ensured his final and eternal rest." Creel sighed as he let me go. Then a split second later he slapped me across the face hard enough to crack my new porcelain skin. Lucky me, I found a replacement. "Will you two behave yourselves?" Sinclair suddenly shouted, suddenly pulling our attention over to the other Cabal members. We watched Creel in annoyance and me in horror as Sinclair's shadow and the ringleader Antonio kicked Travis's head between the two of them. Creel scared and walked over, scooping the head up and scolding the two creatures. "We don't want Sinclair blowing a gasket in my shop. Not to mention the two of you are ruining my floors." He pointed down at the black sludge that had stained the wooden floors of the Voodoo shop. Antonio shrugged but nodded in agreement. The shadow slithered back over to his master and hovered over his shoulder. "Are we done here? I have a business to run." Sinclair sighed, taking a cigar out from his jacket pocket, before having it swiped by Creel, who pointed at the no smoking sign over at the door to the shop. The blond man stared at the Voodoo man in anger before swiping his cigar back and cutting the end off of it. "You really shouldn't smoke, sir." The surgeon spoke up, coming from behind Sinclair and avoiding the wide-eyed gaze of his shadow as he walked over to me. His interest piqued with my porcelain skin. "Ruins your body," he told Sinclair, while his attention was wholly focused on me, taking me by the face much softer than Creel, and examining me up and down. "Spare me a lecture, Harrison. I quit drinking, like hell I'll quit smoking." He placed the cigar in his mouth, and his shadow was quick to strike a match for him. Taking a soft drag from the item in his mouth, he looked over at the pissed Creel, and blew smoke right in his face. I wasn't able to see what was really going on as the surgeon, Harrison I figured, examined me with those big green eyes of his. "You are a marvelous specimen. It's a wonderful thing to have your beauty preserved like this. Pity he didn't let me fix your nose before he did this to you. Otherwise, you look truly stunning, darling," Harrison said with a smile and a stroke of my cheek. I shivered as tears started to well in my eyes. Before Harrison could do anything else to me, his hand was smacked away by Creel's gloved hand. "Hands off the merchandise, Dr. Harrison," Creel told him, shooing him away, and smiling at me as he lifted up his cane and beat it against his hand as he kept deep eye contact with me. I tried to back up, but my body refused to move. It felt as if it was stuck in place. "You know, you truly do look just like her," Creel told me, just as he lifted up his cane and brought it down on my face. My face cracked open, and I went tumbling to the floor. "Is that supposed to happen?" Antonio's voice asked as I fell to the floor and more porcelain cracked and fell off my body. However, while those pieces fell off of me, I still felt fine. In fact, I was able to move those parts of my body now. Twisting my head and neck, I felt more of the porcelain crack and fall off of me. I moved my arms up to where he struck me, and felt my skin there. And to my complete shock and surprise, I felt my regular skin. What in fresh hell? Creel asked, just as surprised and shocked as I was. I sat up and the rest of his porcelain shell fell off of my body, revealing that underneath it, I still had all my skin. Everything was normal underneath the porcelain shell that had surrounded my body. I looked up and shivered as the cabal members all gathered around to look at me. Looks like you're losing your touch, Creel. Antonio chuckled as looked over me. Somehow he had gotten a hold of Travis's head and was tossing it up and down like it was a ball. Sinclair, watching him act like a child, couldn't take it anymore and grabbed the head, tossing it as hard as he could into the wall. This can't happen. How the hell did you not turn into a doll? Creel screamed at me, reaching out and trying to grab me by the collar. As he tried to do so, he quickly pulled his hand back and scared in pain as it seemed to burn and sizzle. Reaching up to where he had tried to grab me, I felt a necklace around my throat. The one Mama DuPont had given me. I haven't lost my touch. She's got a protection necklace on. Creel hissed, holding onto his hand as it sizzled, and chunks of his flesh fell off. I held the necklace with my hand as I quickly stood up and began to back up towards the wall. The cabal members watched me the whole time, while Creel dealt with his melting hand. Stay away from me, I told them, getting some kind of comfort from the fact that they couldn't do anything to me. Mama DuPont's necklace had worked. She had feared the voodoo priestess had abandoned her, but in fact, she had never left her side. Well, if she doesn't want us approaching her, guess we won't have to stop LeBlanc. Antonio chuckled as he pointed to something behind me. Following his finger, I looked behind me, but finding nothing behind me, until a drip of water fell onto my head. Looking up slowly, I couldn't help but let out a scream when I saw the giant insect-like creature crawling on the ceiling. His eyeless gaze stared right at me as drool fell from his mouth. Since you can't finish her off, Charles, LeBlanc can do it for you, Sinclair said with the first smile I had ever seen on his face. Clearly, he was starting to enjoy my suffering. LeBlanc fell from the ceiling, landing on his 4 legs and standing up like some horrible centaur. I started to back up, before tripping and falling on something. Looking at what it was, I was met with the smiling cackle of Sinclair's shadow. Stay away from me, I shouted at LeBlanc as he started to slowly crawl over to me. I began to scan for any kind of weapon that could help me in this situation. Finally, my eyes fell on the counter and the baseball bat behind there. Well, that was one way to fight off a robber. Getting to my knees, I quickly curled over and grabbed the wooden bat. I see now why the Romans enjoyed gladiator fights. Sinclair chuckled again, puffing on his cigar with a satisfied face as he watched my struggle. Maybe if she kills LeBlanc, you can take over Garibaldi. Sinclair turned his attention over towards Antonio, who looked at him like he was an absolute genius. She is an orphan. A bit on the older side, but an orphan either way, he said with some excitement, turning his attention over to me as I made some half-hearted swings at LeBlanc. The creature flinched back every time I swung as he tried to measure out a good moment to strike. I promised to make it as painless as possible, madam, LeBlanc told me in a voice that in no way at all matched his monstrous appearance. He let his mouth dangle open, and the voice spilled out without the need for him to form the words. You will make an excellent breeding body, he told me, causing my stomach to twist in a gag to come up from the pits of my stomach. Taking that opportunity, LeBlanc attacked me with a lunge. I was able to hit him in the head with the bat and throw off his charge. He slammed right into the counter and reduced it to splinters and pieces of wood. Panting, I backed up from LeBlanc as he tossed and screeched. Great, another thing I need to replace, Creel groaned, planting his face into his good hand. This got a chuckle out of Sinclair as he happily puffed away on his cigar. I meanwhile was taking a good look around for some way to escape. But for Creel's character there was only one way out, and it was blocked by all the cabal members. Sir? A familiar voice asked as the front door opened. Everyone's attention turned towards John, who had just entered to start his shift. But clearly, he was confused, and a little bit scared of the giant creature that was only now standing up from the rubble of his desk. "Ah, Johnny boy. You're a bit early." Creel chuckled, walking over to John and putting an arm around him. He led the boy back outside, and I watched as John's gaze landed on Travis's head. With Creel gone, LeBlanc started crawling back over to me, ready for another attack. As he was again about to lunge at me, he was pulled back to the floor by Sinclair's shadow. "All right, now that he's gone, I can end this charade." Sinclair stepped forward, still happily puffing away at his cigar, and looking down on me like I was some sort of fly stuck in flypaper. "Little girl, you should count yourself lucky. I'm going to cut a deal with you, so I don't have to keep chasing after you and reviving that top hat wearing idiot," Sinclair said, offering his hand to me to give up my bat. "Why would I even consider any offer from you freaks?" I told him, gripping my bat tight in my hands and raising it to swing at him. As if on cue, Sinclair's shadow let LeBlanc go and allowed the insect-like beast to tackle me, just as I turned to beat him with the bat. Down on the floor, LeBlanc snarled and gnashed his teeth at me as he again tried to rip my clothes to shreds. I did my best to get him off of me, but it was all in vain as he leaned down and sunk his teeth into my shoulder, getting a scream of pain out of me. "Maybe now you'll consider it," Sinclair told me, his shadow grabbing LeBlanc and yanking him off of me. The creature left deep in bleeding teeth marks behind in my shoulder as I sat up and scurried away from the creature. "Look, I could care less what you did to Charles, or whatever history you have with him. Knowing him, he'll hunt you to the ends of the earth for spiting him and destroying something he enjoyed playing with," Sinclair told me, tapping his cigar over me and getting ash all over me. "He's very persistent." Antonio nodded in agreement, looking over at Sinclair with a grin. Dr. Harrison also agreed, and LeBlanc was too busy snarling at me to really give any further input. I got to my feet, my bat still in hand as I looked between all of these people that had wanted to feed me to an insect creature in a suit a few moments ago. He killed my mom. And now he made me kill my brother. Why would I want to run from him? I told them all, holding the bat close to me and pointing it at Sinclair when he started to approach him. He simply kept walking and yanked the bat from me with ease. "Look here, bitch. I'm giving you one chance at never having to deal with us again. Even if you somehow manage to kill Charles all by yourself, we'll simply bring him back. That's our little deal. One of us dies, the others bring him back," he explained. Suddenly it all made sense. How Creel had returned all those times seemingly without a good explanation. They had revived him. "That's sort of our whole deal." Antonio nodded, putting his arm around Harrison, who was awkwardly trying to shuffle away from the white-haired ringleader. "We have nice dinners, revive each other, hang out. We're like a cool kids club," Antonio said with excitement, getting a groan and shake of the head from Sinclair. "Ignore him. The deal I have for you is that I get Charles off your back, and you fuck off, and don't interfere with our dealings. Otherwise, well, I'll let Charles have all the fun he wants in dealing with you. He's taken your family. I'm sure there's ways for him to fuck you over some more," Sinclair told me, blowing a noxious cloud of smoke in my face and sending me into a coughing fit. "What the hell are you trying to do, Constantine?" Creel's voice emerged from behind us. A growling of anger built from him. His face twisted in anger and rage at Sinclair. The blonde-haired businessman simply shrugged at him and approached Creel as if he was simply approaching a work colleague. "I'm stopping you from getting obsessed over another little shit and dragging us down here another 4 or 5 times to bring you back from death. I'm done dealing with your shit, Charles. Let this one go and let me get back to Sombra. Let Antonio go back to his stupid circus. Let Dr. Harrison back to his plastic surgery, and let LeBlanc go back to trying to have a baby," he demanded from Creel, poking his finger into the voodoo man's chest. "What gives you the right to tell me what to do, Blondie?" Creel demanded to know, slapping Sinclair's hand away and lifting his cane as if to smack him, only to be stopped by Sinclair's shadow, who gripped Creel's cane and prevented him from striking its master. "The favor you owe me," Sinclair told Creel, causing the voodoo man to stare at him like he had dug up some deep dark secret. Antonio yelled out in excitement, shaking Harrison back and forth while he still had his arm around him. I quickly looked over at LeBlanc to see if he was about to come and attack me, but he had lost interest in me and was crawling back over towards the office. There I saw his unamused nurse with his wheelchair waiting. "Hold on," I shouted out, getting everyone's attention with my sudden shout. "I haven't agreed to shit yet. No way in fucking hell." I screamed at them, lifting my bat up and ready to swing at them. "Olivia, dear," came a familiar voice from the door. Everyone's attention turned to it, and to my great relief it was Mama DuPont. She held in her hand a candle, and the mere sight of it sent Creel scurrying away like a cockroach exposed to light. I quickly ran over to her and wrapped my arms around the woman, squeezing her tight and thanking her a million times for coming to get me. "You dare to come into my shop with that thing?" Creel asked in anger, pointing his cane over at Mama DuPont and flinching back when she pointed the candle back at him. I got behind at Mama's direction and held my back close. Looking over to the floor, I saw Travis's head and quickly leaned down and picked it up. "This girl is under my protection now, King Creel, and you will do no more harm to her," she commanded, backing us up to the door. Sinclair looked at us like we were children playing pretend, and he shook his head. "You should have done my deal, little girl. This'll only piss him off more." Sinclair offered a shrug and one last puff from his cigar. "But I'll have no more part in this." He dropped his cigar to the floor and stamped it out before turning to re-enter the office. His shadow followed behind him and waved goodbye to me. "You can take her, but I'll get her back, and when I do, I'll make damn sure that she becomes my doll," Creel hissed at us, planting his cane on the ground, and grunted in anger as Mama DuPont led me and Travis's head out of the shop and out into the cool breeze. "Thank you for saving me," I whimpered as I dropped the bat and held Travis's head close to my chest. Mama DuPont didn't let her guard down until we were safely away from the voodoo shop, and she finally blew the candle she had out. Letting a sigh out, she turned around and gave me a tight squeeze. "I'm sorry about all this, sugar," she told me, stroking the back of my head and getting me to cry uncontrollably into her neck as everything that had just happened bubbled forth and flooded me like a flash flood. We returned to her voodoo shop, where she wrapped me up in a blanket and gave me some hot cocoa to calm down. She also took Travis's head to see if she could do anything. She had already told me that there was nothing she could do to save Mom. I looked over to the door constantly to see if Creel would come and get his revenge on me, but he didn't. Mama DuPont had told me that that candle would have helped his spirit finally move on to the other side if he had gotten too close to it. Explained why he was so afraid of it. I spent a few days with her in the shop, and eventually, she drove me to my house to gather a few clean clothes and other materials. As I was entering my room, I stopped and went into Mom's room. Everywhere were photos of us together as I grew up. I couldn't help but pick every one of them up and look at them. As I was about to leave, I saw an envelope made out to me on her pillow. Walking over and opening it, I looked down at it and read its contents. "My dearest Olivia, words cannot describe the love I have for you. The day I was selected to be your new mother was the happiest of my long painful life. When I saw the horrible conditions in which you lived, I knew that I had to step up and become the mother you deserved. I never once thought of anything other than what was best for you. And I pride myself in seeing you turn into such a beautiful girl filled with life. I'm writing you this letter in case something happens to me and I have to leave you before my time is up. Know that the years I spent as your mother were the happiest of my entire life, and that I love you so very much. Your loving mother, Alexandra." The letter caused me to break down in grief, but also put a smile on my face as I did so. She always loved me, and she did everything she could possibly have done to raise me right. And she did it. Wiping my eyes, I was startled to see Charlie sitting on the bed waiting for me to finish. "Hey, kiddo. Sorry, it took so long to find you," he told me, offering me Tempe and a hug as I cried into his shoulder about everything that happened to me. We sat and talked for a few minutes about my mom and about Travis. The whole time Charlie gave me this look of sad understanding. "You're very special, Livy," he finally told me after a moment of silence. "You don't know it, but you truly are a very special person. You can talk to me in this form and you could tell the future. If only slightly and vaguely," he told me, offering his hand to me. I took it and looked him in the eyes. "What are you trying to tell me, Charlie?" I asked him, to which he pointed down at the Tempe doll. "This is a vessel for spirits. You can't save Alexandra's spirit. She's already moved on, unfortunately. But you might be able to save Travis," he told me. My eyes grew wide as he said that. I looked down at Tempe and then back up at him. "What about you? Are you gonna share it with him?" I asked him, to which he shook his head and offered a chuckle. "I think it's time I finally move on," he told me, which got a quick shake of my head and a plead for me to stay. But he simply wiped my tears from my eyes and took my hands into his. When I was going to marry Mary, the similar words got a little giggle from him. All I ever wanted was a kid. And I got that with you, Olivia. Seeing you grow up and survive on your own. I couldn't be prouder, he told me, which got me a smile. "I'm gonna miss you, Tempe," I said with a chuckle through tears, wiping my eyes and giving Charlie a tight hug. He returned it and pulled back, rubbing his arm and smiling back at me. "Tell Travis if you see him again. I'm so sorry for everything Creel did to him," he told me as he started to fade away. I nodded and promised him. As Charles Sumner finally moved on, he let out one last sad but loving word. "Mary." And he was gone. Taking the now empty Tempe doll, I walked back out and over to Mama DuPont. That night we held a seance with Trace's head and the empty Tempe doll. In the back of my mind, I kept saying a silent prayer that he would come back and be with me again. It took us many hours and we were on the verge of giving up. And then in a flash of light, Travis was sitting at the table rubbing his head in confusion. "Travis," I shouted to him. He looked over at me in confusion at first, and then with a smile on his face, as we both hugged each other tight and let out tears of pure joy. Afterward, Mama DuPont put Travis's spirit into the empty Tempe doll, and Travis's spirit now resides inside of it. To make it feel like his body, I knitted him a little hoodie for him. Me and him spend our days working and helping out at Mama DuPont's. I still go to school, but this time with plenty of protection items to protect me. Travis definitely has difficulty adjusting to his new body, but he still brings me immense amounts of joy to have him with me. The last member of my family. But I won't just let them get away with this. All of them need to pay for what they did to me. But I can't just go in running blind and get myself killed. I need to read Mama DuPont's guide and make sure I know everything about them. Travis and Mama DuPont are behind me 100%. And in time, I'll take my revenge for Mom and for Travis. But for now, that's all I have to tell. For me and Travis. Stay away from all King Creel's half-priced voodoo store.